Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. We've got a fantastic show on the way. But first, I just want to say thanks to NordVPN, our sponsors here at the Everything is Black and White podcast, who without none of this would be possible. And we've teamed up with them to offer our listeners and viewers an exclusive offer. You can click the link in the podcast description box or go to nordvpn.com/tune to sign up and save your pennies on a plan. It is well worth your time to sign up. You are secure, you are safe, and you're supporting the podcast. Why sign up? I hear you ask. Well, there are a host of benefits. For me, it is the value for money because one subscription can be used across 10 devices. That's your work phone, your personal phone, your tablet, what have you. 10 devices, one subscription. I mean, that is the definition of value for money. The other thing I love about it as well is the way that it keeps your details safe and secure when browsing on public Wi-Fi. So if you're on the bus, the train, you're in a cafe and you're connected to their Wi-Fi, there is always the risk that your details could be compromised. That's your bank details, your passwords, and a load of other stuff as well. But with Nord, you are safe and you are secure. And that for me means a heck of a lot. And look, if you're going abroad as well and you're missing your home comforts and you want to keep with it with all your UK streaming services, then you can click the location back to the UK and make sure you never miss your favorite program. What is not to love about it? It's absolutely fantastic. Very simple to get on board. You download the app, you sign up, and away you go. You're keeping yourself safe, you're keeping yourself secure, and you're supporting the podcast at the same time. And another benefit, and I've already mentioned three, and there are a host of other things to mention as well if we had the time. But the final thing I'm going to mention is a 30-day money-back guarantee. So it's literally no risk. If you don't like it, get your money back. But you will like it because it's a superb app to have on your phone. Keeps you safe, keeps you secure. And once again, you're supporting the podcast. So click the link or go to nordvpn.com/tune to take advantage of an exclusive offer for our listeners and viewers of the Everything is Black and White podcast. Roll the titles. Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Angie Musgrove, and it's time for the view from the opposition. This week it comes from the Liverpool Echo's Ian Doyle. And I have to say, Ian, I'm speaking to you far too much for my liking these days.
Yeah, most people say that, to be fair.
You well? You good?
Yeah, yourself? You're not too angry at the moment?
I'm past it, to be honest. I'm just looking forward to Monday now and the atmosphere and hopefully a victory for Newcastle. But yes, come on then. We'll get it out of the way now. The Alexander Isak saga. I mean, what a week it's been. And that obviously is playing away in the background and is the main narrative of this game on Monday. What's your latest thoughts on this soap opera?
Well, when the statement from Newcastle came out the other night after Isak had obviously said one or two things on social media, I read it and went, well, quite clearly Newcastle remain open for a sale. It's the first time they publicly admitted it or suggested that could happen. And an awful lot of them are still getting a lot of Newcastle fans saying, can't you read? That's not what the case is. But unfortunately for Newcastle fans, and I'm speaking as somebody who's quite old now and has seen these kind of things at various clubs many times, that was my main reading from it. That for all the talk of Newcastle saying he's not going to be for sale this summer, they have opened the door a bit. And while they said we don't foresee these circumstances happening, whatever the phrase was, well, you can't look into the future. You can't predict the future. And there's still, another week and a bit to go in the transfer window. So I'm still very much of the belief that he's probably going to leave Newcastle in the next 6 months. If it's not now, it'll be January for a number of reasons, which I'm sure we can get onto in a bit. But I think if you're Newcastle now, I would be looking to go, right, this has gone on too long. It's gone on, what's happening now has become a massive distraction certainly for Newcastle, not less so for Liverpool because they made the bid, it was turned down and they're just waiting to see what happens. But for Newcastle, it's the only thing people are talking about. I watched the game actually against Villa and definitely need a striker, that's for sure. And should be the concentration now. And for all the reasons I know you've mentioned in your podcast many times over the past few months of the things that are happening behind the scenes, or the things that aren't happening behind the scenes, at Newcastle, that actually with the concentration now, and if you've got a player there who's your most prized asset, and the longer he's not playing or he's on the sidelines, he's going to lose value. It's not going to go up. So there may be a decision to make, and from Liverpool's point of view, that's essentially what they've been waiting for.
I think the issue for Newcastle and for Liverpool to a degree is that they are still trying to replace Callum Wilson. If they sell Alexander Isak after the game on Monday and they still haven't replaced Callum Wilson, then you are literally left with Anthony Gordon, who just can't cut it up top as much as he tries and puts all his effort in, and Will Asula, who's not ready to even be thrown in there. So I can understand the club's stance, and I think in an ideal world, and if they could say if Sesko had arrived, or ironically had Ekitike arrived at Newcastle, then I think Isak would be a Liverpool player right now. But obviously things haven't worked out, and the closer we get to the deadline, the more desperate Newcastle United become. And I actually think the stance becomes harder because they are not going to get in two quality strikers. They're struggling to get one in at the moment. And I still think they need two top strikers before Isak is sold. My instinct tells me that he will remain a Newcastle United player. And I get all the arguments about why you need to sell him now, because his value will go down in January if he's not played. And then obviously next summer, it'll go down even further. But I also think there's an element of Newcastle having to show the likes of Liverpool that they won't be bullied. And, this is a message to other potential buying teams who might fancy Tonali or Bruno or Joelinton, that, we're going to remain strong in the face of kind of maybe bully boy antics. And I'm sure you might disagree with that term, but I think Newcastle have to show that they can be strong and won't be walked over or pushed over by either top teams or players who want to leave and act in this manner, because that's the bottom line of it, is that Isak has acted disgracefully, to be quite honest with you. And if he'd gone about it the right way, then I think he would also be a Liverpool player as we speak now. But anyway, unless you want to come back on any of that.
Yes, I would like to say something on that. All I would say is there's a player at Brentford who Newcastle want to sign, and it's a very similar situation. Look, right, I don't know a single Liverpool supporter who thinks what Isak is doing is the right thing. Don't know anybody who thinks that. He's gone about it all completely the wrong way. Now, there are, it's never great when you want to leave a club, especially when you help them win, the first domestic trophy in 70 years, and you've therefore automatically become like a legend to a certain degree. And then now, about 2 months later, he tells them, I quite fancy a different challenge. And then another 2 months down the line, 3 months down the line, we get to this point. So that's a bit awkward. But yeah, I think Isak, I wouldn't have any concerns long-term over his character, even if he does stay at Newcastle, because we know what football fans are like. They're incredibly fickle. If he gets welcomed back into the team, there'll be jeers and chants, but if he scores a couple of goals, it'll be like, great, that was fine, he's back again. And also, from Newcastle's point of view, there's nothing bigger than the club. There's nobody. So they're obviously just acting in their best interest, because every team, every club has had this. Liverpool had it with, there was one where Javier Mascherano back in 2010, he got told that he could go, and then he then got told you can't go when he had a move lined up for Barcelona, and basically he just refused to play against Manchester City on one game. I think it was a Monday night, and then within a couple of days he'd gone. So there's an example of somebody forcing their way through. Slightly different in the sense that back then Liverpool, the club, were just all over the place, and they nearly went into administration a couple of months later. So you can kind of understand it then, because they were very much struggling as a club. But I wouldn't say Newcastle at the moment. You know what I mean? Like, they're in the Champions League and just won a trophy. So it's an awkward one for them. And if you take PSR out of it, for obvious reasons, Newcastle don't need the money. If it wasn't for, they wouldn't need the money otherwise. If it wasn't for these rules, which probably why they've been brought in the first place. That's a completely different argument, though, isn't it? We don't want to get into that. We'll be here for like all day. But I think overall, well, it's very distasteful the way that Isak's gone about it. I don't necessarily think that's a reflection on him from what I've heard as a person. I just think he's been incredibly badly advised. He's obviously got a bit frustrated. And of course, any footballer wants to play. So he won't enjoy not playing. He won't enjoy not training around the team, no matter who it is. And I think sometimes people forget that, because supporters quite rightly are angry with him, because pretty sure almost every Newcastle fan would love to play for Newcastle. Now we've got a player who is actively not wanting to, for what we're led to believe is true. I mean, even if he's not going to play for Newcastle in the next game as well, so the earliest he's going to be playing is best part of another month, and they'll have had 2 weeks from the close of the transfer window. He'll go off and play international football, and if he's still at the club, things could easily change quite quickly. But look at it from Liverpool's point of view, they are a striker short. I think we have to address it. They lost Diogo Jota, who obviously got killed in the car crash, and that's something that you can't account for. And they've now left themselves a couple of strikers short. So Liverpool can't make it, go to the last minute, the transfer deadline, because they need somebody else, which sounds a bit mad when you consider how much money they've spent. But, it's not like Arsenal, where they've spent nearly, I think if they get Eze, they've spent something like 260 million net spend. Liverpool's might just be around 100, just under 100, which is a not insignificant number when you're looking at the levels that Liverpool are buying and selling players at. It has, and they spent 110 million on one player, 116, on one player in Florian Wirtz, that it's left them a little bit short. So I don't think Liverpool can afford to wait too long for this Isak thing, but I've always said it won't move properly either way until after the game on Monday.
Yeah, because you don't want to give Liverpool a boost by getting that deal agreed, do you? Because that totally changes the atmosphere and what have you. I mean, on Wissa, just to jump in there, it's like you see with Liverpool fans. There's not one Newcastle United fan who applauds what Johan Wissa's doing, and he's also acted totally the wrong way about getting this move if it indeed does come off, and it has to be made clear to him that your behaviour was unacceptable to get here, but now go out and score a few goals, and like you say, everything else will be forgotten. I mean, just finally on Isak, the price tag is something that I see going back and forth, and I'm very much in the camp in that I thought the £110 million offer was quite insulting. And I know Liverpool fans say, well, it's a British record fee, how can it be insulting? But the fact is, it's well short of what its value is. And I know Liverpool fans don't think Isak is worth potentially £150 million, but I don't think he's worth much less than that. I think he is worth that, if not more, to be honest. He's that good. What was your take, and what is your take on what the next bid potentially could be, in your bid on your thought on the original one as well?
Well, I know we disagree on this, but £150 million, I don't think it's worth that. And the reason that I think that is a couple of things. One, there's only ever been one number 9 who's moved for that amount of money, and that's Kylian Mbappe. And as good as Isak is, he's not as good as Mbappe. And I think if you look at it, if he was put up for sale for £150 million on the market, who's going to buy him? Because Real Madrid certainly won't buy him, because they don't like spending money on any players, as Liverpool have found out with Trent Alexander-Arnold this year. Nobody else in Spain can afford that. No one in Italy, no one in Germany. It's only Premier League clubs. So I know Chelsea like to buy every single player that exists, so they could possibly go for them. Is he going to go to Man City? No, because Haaland's there. Would you join Man United? Well, if you're Sesko, you do, but then that's a completely different argument. So that is going to be a problem for Newcastle, because it's Liverpool are the team that he wants to go to, and they don't value him at that. And the other thing as well is that if Newcastle value him at £150 million, they should be paying him a contract that's about, equivalent to 150. And I know, again, that's something else that's completely different. One thing I would say on Isak, by the way, the bid £110 million, you can see why Liverpool have bid that. I don't think it was insulted. I think the one thing that people keep on saying, they're bottling it. It's like, well, hang on, you can't bottle it if you're paying offering £110 million for a player. Don't care who he is, right? And the other thing about Isak is, in terms of him, he mentioned in his statements about losing the trust of the club, because there's no chief executive there at the moment, and there's no sporting director. Sometimes when that happens, clubs can go, well, we'll move on the person, they've dealt with the sporting director, we could possibly move on, we can smooth it over. But because there's nobody there, this is directly from the owners, presumably. And the owners aren't going anywhere. So how on earth are they going to rebuild the trust with the player? Because it's a direct line to them. It's not Eddie Howe or anyone like that. It's basically straight to the owners.
Yeah, the lack of a director of football, I think, has had an impact on this summer, and most likely in this saga. But I have to disagree with that. I think £110 million is just wasting everybody's time, because he's worth more than Wirtz, who's cost 116 million. And you look at other price tags paid for players this summer. You know, some of them have been absolutely extortionate. The market is inflated, and I get what you're saying. You know, there's no competition for his signature. He wants to go there. Liverpool are the only side in for him, so that does impact. And Newcastle are not going to get a bit more for him. But at the same time, you know, he's worth more than 110 million, because you buy Alexander Isak, there is no title race. It's done and dusted. You know, he is that good, and I do think it was a bit of an insulting offer, to be quite honest.
Let's split the difference then, 130.
I do think that's probably the area that it will come down to. I don't think Newcastle will get 150 million, even though I do think he's worth that. But I think 130 maybe with a few add-ons might get it done, to be honest.
The funny thing as well is that, just stepping away from it for a minute, 150 million pounds for anybody is ridiculous, isn't it? Really, doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter. It's just like we're just like bandying these figures around us, and it's like, hang on, what's going on? How did this happen? At what point did this happen?
Crazy, isn't it? I mean, could you imagine all those years ago? And was it Trevor Francis? Was he the first £1 million player?
I'm not that old.
I know, but I'm just saying. I mean, who's to value anyone at that amount of money?
Well, exactly. Yeah. If they can afford it,
Exactly. If you want to win the title as soon as these signatures on the paper, then just pay 150 million. It's that simple. I look forward to the Liverpool fans who, for some reason, in the last few weeks, have managed to break into the comments here and are always very lively with their thoughts on Alexander Isak. Hello. Right. Let's talk about Monday, because there is a game of football to be had. And actually, I was saying this on the match preview with John Gibson. Ironically, if you're Alexander Isak and you watched that game against Bournemouth, you would be licking your lips at the prospect of facing this Liverpool defence, because they looked pretty slow and disorganised at times. And obviously, Bournemouth did get the better of them twice. The game obviously went your way in the end, but it didn't look like the Liverpool defence that we're used to. Was that just in stages of that game? Was that just a one-off? Was it just on the night, or is it something a bit more terminal?
Well, the reason it didn't look like the Liverpool defence you're used to is because it wasn't the Liverpool defence that people are used to. That's the thing. You had two new fullbacks, one of whom is now injured anyway, in Frimpong, who was the better one. Kirkes, who was playing against his former club, who quite clearly was trying way too hard to impress. They both went off after an hour. You've got Canate, who is in the last 12 months of his contract, and again, mentioned Real Madrid. The suggestion is they're going to try and sign him for nothing at the end of his contract, and Liverpool haven't got anywhere really with contract talks. I think his head's kind of been turned for the past 4 or 5, 6 months, to be perfectly honest. So you've got two players who are new, one that's not playing at his best. And then in midfield, you've got your main defensive midfielder wasn't there because he was suspended in Gravenberch. And then you've got a forward and an attacking midfielder who last season they would have been not defensive minded, but they like the old pressing and stuff like that. There are two new players who aren't necessarily adjusted to that. So having said all that, the two Bournemouth goals were on counter attack. So it's not as if Bournemouth were absolutely battering Liverpool in that sense. But it's this. If you go back and look at Liverpool's record for the past 6 months, including the friendlies, I think they've only kept something like 2 clean sheets in about 17 or 18 games. So, and I know they possibly took the foot off after having won the league quite early last season, and you can't read too much into friendlies. But defensively, they're a completely new team, so it'll take time. So I've said for weeks now that I don't think Liverpool are going to. All this stuff about signing Isak, they're going to win the league. I don't think they're going to win the league at all. I think if Arsenal don't win the league this season, I think Arteta's got to resign or get sacked. It's absolutely there for them. I think we've already seen that City are probably a bit better than people might have expected. But go back and look how much money those two spent overall, net spend over the past 6 months, and it's ridiculous. So they should be up there. So I do think that Liverpool are kind of having this, are going to, I reckon, have the season, or certainly the first couple of months now that everybody thought they were going to have last season, where they get a new manager in. Whereas last season, they just got the new manager in and kept the team exactly the same. This time, it's manager changes the team into more of his vision. It takes a while. So I do think that the points that Liverpool gain over the first 2 or 3 months are going to be very important. And for them, unfortunately, their first away game is at Newcastle, and the second home game is at home to Arsenal. So, and I think the fifth game is Everton in the derby. So it's the fixture hasn't been particularly kind in that sense. Whereas you could argue last year it was, which is why they made a good start and ended up winning the league. So bit of swings and roundabouts. But going back to the defending, yeah, Liverpool, it's a good time to play. And I know Newcastle, you might say it's a good time to play us, but I think with the crowd, we know what it can be like up at St James's Park. And to be honest, we've had this conversation. Don't think I've ever known a more nailed-on home win than this one. You can just see it 2-0 to Newcastle, and nobody would be surprised. And that is not just going, crying it in. It's like from many, many years' experience of covering games like this, and you just know what's going to happen.
Well, it would be the first win in, I think it's 17, is it, for Newcastle? It's something crazy like that against Liverpool. I think probably the first win of Eddie Howe against Liverpool in the league. But on the defensive issues, I mean, it would be brilliant if Newcastle had a centre forward to take advantage of those defensive issues. But on the flanks, they do have two very pacey, two very threatening wingers, obviously one in Elanga and the other in Harvey Barnes. I mean, I'm going to look forward to Elanga going up against Kirkes if he keeps his spot at left back, which I imagine he will do. I mean, is that a battle that you think will worry Arne Slot?
I'd be less worried about that. I mean, the thing is at right back, because Frimpong's out, Conor Bradley, I think, would have played anyway. He's only just played a little bit of training yesterday, haven't been out for 3 weeks. And Joe Gomez came off the bench against Bournemouth, and that's the first Premier League game he'd played since last December. So you may end up with a situation where you've got either midfielders, Curtis Jones or Dominic Szoboszlai playing at right back. And if you're Newcastle, that's exactly, you'd go over there. And if Gordon's going to be playing down the middle, you'd get him to kind of venture over towards that and get runners from midfield going into the box and picking up on stuff. So that's what I'd do if I was Newcastle. Hopefully they're not listening to this.
I mean, how big of a loss is Frimpong? Because I mean, that is such a good deal. Obviously, they knew the release clause and what have you. He looks such an exciting player. I guess to lose him at any time isn't ideal, but obviously right at the start of the season and just when you want to kind of get going, how big of a loss is he?
I mean, it's interesting because he barely played during the summer at right back. He played a lot in right midfield because Liverpool also see him as a replacement for Salah, because Salah's going to be missing 6 or 10 games over the winter due to the Africa Cup of Nations. So that's part of the reason why they brought him in. But to lose him and also Conor Bradley, who did well when he came in replacing Trent Alexander-Arnold last season when required, that's the issue. And again, it wouldn't be a problem if Joe Gomez was fit, because Joe Gomez has played right back for, he can do it. He played well a couple of seasons ago, but also he's not fit. So that's the concern, is that to lose Frimpong at a time when you've already got a couple of players nowhere near fully fit in the same position, which is unusual to have that many injured in the same place, but that would be the weak point. The one good thing for Liverpool is Gravenberch's back, and he proved last year that he's a lot better in that position than I think anybody thought he was going to be, and he was a key reason to why Liverpool won the league. So having him back, McAllister missed a lot of the summer as well because he had an injury towards the end of last season, and he's still getting back up to speed. And then, as I mentioned, ahead of him, I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if Wirtz doesn't play, because we know what Newcastle's midfield is like, and they like to get about both physically and foulingly. That's not even a word, but you know what I mean. They're very good at the kind of challenges that a 50-50 free kick or not, and then not getting a free kick. Crystal Palace also good at that, by the way. So I think if he hasn't already had a bit of a rude awakening about the physicality of the Premier League, if he plays at Newcastle, he'll certainly get it then. And that's not even adding into factoring in the crowd and what the atmosphere is going to be like, which, I just think it's funny. I just always think these kind of atmospheres are funny. It's like, I'd be like terrible on the pitch if I was playing. I'd just be like laughing all the time.
It's going to be extremely loud, to put it in a family-friendly manner. I will speak about the atmosphere in a moment. How will Liverpool approach this game in terms of on the pitch? Will they try and control the majority of it? Will they invite Newcastle on to have the majority of the ball, do you think?
Well, I think with Newcastle, as you mentioned, obviously having no striker, I think it may be more on what Newcastle do. And I think if Newcastle have got any sense, they'll play on the counter-attack, because that's where Liverpool have been weak, not just in the game against Bournemouth and Palace, but they played AC Milan and got beat. I can't remember what score it was, 4-2, I think it was, in the summer, and they conceded 3 goals on their counter-attack then, which were almost identical goals. So that's been an issue. Slot said he hopes that the return of Gravenberg, he's good at filling in those kind of holes. That would stop that happening, but that's what I would expect to happen. I mean, obviously, for the first 10 minutes, you expect Newcastle to be up for it, just running around, flying in with tackles, and I think Liverpool have to be prepared for that. But given the fact that, look what happened last season at St James's. First half, Liverpool were absolutely nowhere and ended up, it only took a goalkeeping mistake to get Newcastle a point. But of course, Trent came on in that game, didn't he? And helped turn it, and he's not there now. So it will, I think, talking about something separately, but I think Liverpool losing Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to be a massive deal that I think people are only going to realise over time. And Slot said that having Wirtz in is kind of a replacement for him, but in a different position in terms of the creativity. And that's something they're only going to get over a period of time. So I think Liverpool will look just to play their normal game. I think a lot of it will be down on Newcastle now they want to approach it.
Arne Slot in his press conference talked about that intensity. Now they had the better of Liverpool in the first hour last season to James, and of course in the cup final. And I can definitely see it, especially like you say in the first 10 minutes or so, where Newcastle United will be pressing high, right into the face, flying in with challenges, whipping up the crowd, and then I wouldn't be surprised to see them then drop back into a position where they do then soak up pressure and then hit on the counting. And we saw against Villa, they was very dominant in the first half, and then in the second half was a bit more counter as Villa found their feet. And when Konza got sent off for pulling back Anthony Gordon, we saw that came from a Newcastle counter where corner in, Alanga got the ball and straight up the pitch to Gordon, and the rest was a foul and a red card. So I think that's what we will see. And obviously, when you're at home, the expectation is that you should dominate and you should control the game. But I actually think Newcastle United fans are quite accepting that right now they are a team that are better on the transition. So why not soak up the pressure and hit Liverpool on the counter with the pace of Barnes and Alanga? So I do think that's the way they will go. In terms of Newcastle's back line, though, I mean, if you're Ekitike or Salah, you must be looking at and thinking, you've got 3 players there over 30, Trippier, Burn and Schär. Now, Burn and Schär were absolutely fantastic against Aston Villa. It was a toss-up between them two who would win man of the match, and it was Schär in the end, but dominated in the air, plenty of tackles, plenty of interceptions. But the fact is, they are probably lacking a little bit of pace. Do you think that's where Liverpool might try and exploit Newcastle?
I would say yes, but again, I can't see Newcastle pressing loads of players forward for large periods of the game where they leave themselves exposed to that. I think if Liverpool are going to score, it's going to be one where they're going to have to pick their way through, as it were. And maybe that's might be a reason why you play Wirtz then instead of Szoboszlai in the attacking midfield role. It depends, that's going to be a massive call, I think. I mean, it's mad when you think about it because they spent £160 million on this player, but he's not going to play every single game. If he does play, that's what I'd expect. I think Ekitike is an interesting one because I think he's been a lot better than people expected. To be honest, a lot of people hadn't seen him play. And he's come in and he seems to have already got these little link-ups. He's very much ventures off towards the left as well, which is what Wirtz does as well. So I think if Liverpool are going to get a bit of joy, it may be coming from down that kind of left side. So I'm not sure who plays on the right side of the defence, centre-back for Newcastle.
Fabian Schär.
He might be somebody who they might look to play around with the short passes. Because obviously Trippier's the right back. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. And he's, as you mentioned, he's nearly as old as me, but still doing it at that level. So I wouldn't be, if you're Newcastle, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. In fact, if I was Newcastle, I wouldn't be too concerned overall. I'd be looking at Liverpool's weaknesses, what I said at the moment, because there's got a lot more of them now than they will have in 2 months.
And especially with Trippier's ability to get the ball into the box and his dead ball deliveries. I mean, there's definitely going to be time to exploit Liverpool there. I mean, we've mentioned the weaknesses, probably at full-back. I think we can all agree on that. But what's kind of the one strength we should be looking out for from a Newcastle point of view to try and stop?
Liverpool are quite good. That's why they won the league by loads of points. I think I would probably say at the moment Ekitike. And I think, I'm not saying he'll have a point to prove because obviously Newcastle tried to sign him, but I think he's kind of riding that kind of wave of the opposition don't really know what to expect from him as such just yet, and I think that might work in his favour. Like I'm going to say it, for a tall man, he's got a good touch, but he's got a lot more about him than just that. And I know there's been a couple of games up at Newcastle where Nunes has done stuff, and I think Nunes would have been great for this game. Nunes would have been absolutely loved it. So I'm rather hoping, from a Liverpool point of view, that Ekitike, he seems the kind of person who rises to that kind of challenge. So he'd be one. And we haven't even basically mentioned Salah either, have we? I mean, he's wasn't massively at his most productive during the summer. And against Bournemouth, he wasn't brilliant, but a lot of his stuff was like a pass that was just like half a yard or a little bit off. You could see he's still working out how to play with Wirtz and with Ekitike. So I think once that clicks, and of course the right back as well, because he's had Trent behind him for his entire Liverpool career, and now he's not there. So it will be interesting when that clicks, and I think Newcastle will just have to hope that it isn't on Monday.
Yeah, and that Ekitike, rubbish. Oh.
It's like that Isak. You'd pay £10 for him, let alone 110.
Exactly,
yeah,
not
exactly.
At all. Penultimate question then, before we do indeed talk about the atmosphere, is who is the one Newcastle United player you think Liverpool will be looking out for? There's been a lot of talk about Joe Linton.
Well, that's who I was going to say. That's who I was going to say.
Go then.
I think Liverpool will not get caught out again by that. If McAllister plays, I reckon McAllister will look to annoy him, because as an Argentine, he's not the biggest, McAllister, but he absolutely loves a scrap. He loves, and once he's prepared for it, he's ready for it. And I think if he's back up to speed, because he's had another 10 days between the two games since the Bournemouth game for Liverpool until they go to Newcastle, I think that'll work in his favour, and I'd fully expect them two to have a right South American scrap there in the middle of the pitch for most of the game.
Yeah, and Bruno as well alongside him. I mean, Joe Linton is definitely going to be up for this game. I'm just wondering, you think McAllister might actually want to mark Dan Burn at any point?
No, I think he may put Ekitike on Burn this time. I think that's why they've signed him, you see, just for this game.
Just to stop Dan Burn scoring another goal.
Well, I know. Well, Dan Burn but who was it that he tackled? Was it Shah? Was it? Yes, I can't remember. But yeah, he was. Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. Good clearance. He managed to get it away from the goal as well.
The atmosphere then, because already you were expecting something with it being a bank holiday, and no doubt the pub has been well serviced beforehand. But obviously with everything going on in the background with Isak and Ekitike as well, to a certain degree. And this game has always had that undercurrent as well. We always remember the battles between Howe and Klopp on the touchline, and how we felt hard done by that goal in injury time, and you go back further decades and what have you. But this is going to be some cauldron, isn't it, on Monday?
Yes, but I don't think it's anything that certainly the Liverpool players who've been at Liverpool for a while will not be used to, as it were. I think it's more. Let's put it this way. I think the atmosphere will be more for Newcastle players' benefit than to distract or put off Liverpool's players. I think Liverpool just get on with their job, and it's whether the Newcastle ones can take motivation from everything that's going on around, not just the atmosphere, but the Isak situation as well. Because presumably for them, I mean, I read something that they're not all in total agreement about what's going on. So some of them will be like, well, I don't necessarily agree with what he's done, but I know more about this story than some of the other players, and I can see why he's done it, kind of thing. And some of the others will be like, what's he doing? We just won something with him here. We could go off and win something else now. He needs to get back in the team. So there'll be a bit of that. But it's a night game as well, isn't it? You know what night games are like, no matter where you play. So, yeah, I'm expecting it to be pretty lively. And if, as we think, the first 10, 15, 20 minutes is going to go, I think it will go from there. But as I said before, as we saw last season, the game can just swing one way than the other, and then everybody gets a draw and goes home reasonably happy.
Except Alexander Isak, because he's no wiser on where he's going to be spending the rest of his career, right?
Well, the rest of this month, let's put it that way.
What's the score going to be then?
2-0 to Newcastle, 100%. It's like it's 100% a home win. And I said before, I'm not just saying that. I would be concerned for Liverpool anyway at the moment. I mean, maybe that's just me erring on the side of caution because I've seen Liverpool throughout the summer and gone, something's not quite right here. It's going to take a while. And Newcastle, forget anything else. Newcastle away would be one of the hardest games of the season anyway. They didn't win their last season. So, and they've just lost to them in the League Cup final as well. So it wouldn't be a surprise if Newcastle won. I mean, from a Liverpool perspective, I think if they get a draw, they'd be happy with that. They'd be very happy with that.
Well, there we go. I don't think there's half as many Newcastle United fans as confident. I mean, you're not confident as it's not a result you want to see happen, but it's confident that result being the result of the final whistle. So we'll certainly take that. Are you heading up on Monday? Will you be here?
Yes, I will be there, and I will be wearing my riot gear. From some of the comments I've had from Newcastle fans, it's good thing is my picture on my Twitter is me aged about 5, so no one will recognise me. It'll be okay.
There we go. Well, a safe journey up.
Thank you.
Thank you for popping on and providing the insight into Liverpool. To you guys watching and listening, do hit thumbs up. Do get into the comments on YouTube and subscribe. If you're listening on the audio-only platform, leave us a rating and review. And remember to take advantage of your NordVPN exclusive discounted offer. Support the podcast, sign up, and keep yourself safe and secure while browsing away on public Wi-Fi, 1 subscription, 10 devices, and a host of other benefits. And I'll leave the link in the podcast description box. Thank you as always, and I'll see you guys next week.